The golden cage Elena Marchetti had always been good with numbers, but she never imagined her life would become a careful calculation of silence. She sat in the marble-floored kitchen of their Malibu estate, watching the sunrise paint the Pacific, ocean in shades of gold, while her husband Richard Sterling paced behind her, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at some unfortunate employee who had dared to call before 7 in the morning. "No, that's not what I said yesterday." Richard's voice cut through the morning peace like a blade. "The Santiago deal needs to be restructured, and I want it done by noon, or you're off the project." Elena sipped her coffee and continued reviewing. The quarterly reports spread across the granite countertop. These weren't official Sterling Technologies documents. Those were locked away in Richard's private office. These were her own meticulous records, kept in a safety deposit box that Richard didn't know existed. Every algorithm she had quietly debugged at midnight, every client relationship she had nurtured through carefully orchestrated dinner parties, every strategic decision she had whispered to him during their early morning walks, all of it documented, with the precision of someone who understood that memory could be rewritten, but evidence could not. "Mommy, Daddy's loud again," 8-year-old Maya whispered, sliding into the chair beside Elena, with her backpack already strapped on for school. Elena smoothed her daughter's dark hair, so much like her own. "He's just passionate about his work." "Sweetheart," the lie tasted bitter. Richard wasn't passionate. He was paranoid. Success had transformed him from the earnest computer science graduate she had fallen in love with at Stanford into something harder, colder. A man who once spent hours explaining coding concepts to her, who had begged for her help when Sterling Technologies was just 3 people in a garage, now acted as if she had never existed in his professional life. "Can you help me with my math homework tonight?" Maya asked, her voice hopeful. "Of course, baby." Elena kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "We'll do it right after dinner." Richard ended his call and strode over, checking his Rolex with theatrical importance. "Elena, I need you to cancel whatever plans you have this weekend. We're hosting the Morrison Industries executives, and I need everything perfect." It was always "I need" with Richard now, never "we need" or "could you help." Elena had organized dozens of these gatherings, each one crucial to Sterling Technologies' expansion, each one meticulously planned to showcase Richard as the visionary leader, while she remained the perfect, silent wife in the background. "I've already started planning," Elena said quietly. "The menu is set, and I've arranged for the children's area to be prepared so Maya can play upstairs." Richard barely acknowledged her response, already scrolling through his phone again. "Good. And make sure you wear that blue dress, the one from the charity gala. Morrison mentioned how elegant you looked." Elena nodded, though something inside her recoiled. She had become a prop in Richard's performance, carefully positioned to enhance his image. The woman who had spent countless nights coding beside him, who had mortgaged her grandmother's house to fund his first server farm, who had designed the user interface that made Sterling Technologies' breakthrough software accessible to millions. That woman had been erased from the narrative. After Richard left for the office in his Tesla, Elena drove Maya to school in her more modest sedan. As they pulled up to the academy, Maya turned to her with those serious brown eyes that seemed to see too much for an 8-year-old. "Mommy, are you sad?" The question hit Elena like a physical blow. She had thought she was hiding it better. "Why would you think that? You get really quiet when Daddy talks. And sometimes I see you writing in those notebooks late at night." Elena's throat tightened. Those notebooks contained more than just business records. They held her thoughts, her dreams, her plans for a different future. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just ... thinking about some important things." As Maya disappeared into the school building, Elena sat in the parking lot for a long moment, watching other mothers chat and laugh together. When had she become so isolated? When had her world shrunk to the boundaries of Richard's ambitions? Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rachel Kim, her therapist. "Remember what we discussed. You deserve to be seen and heard." Elena stared at the message, then looked up at the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at her had kind eyes, but tired lines around them, expensive clothes that felt like a costume, and a wedding ring that had begun to feel more like a shackle than a symbol of love. For the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to imagine what life might look like if she stopped calculating her silence and started calculating her worth. The betrayal of the Sterling Technologies annual gala was supposed to be Richard's crowning moment. As Elena stood in their bedroom, adjusting the sapphire necklace that had been his anniversary gift 3 years ago, she could hear him downstairs giving last-minute instructions to the catering staff. The blue dress he had requested fit perfectly. As always, she had learned long ago to maintain the exact size and style that complemented his image. "You look beautiful, Mommy," Maya said from the doorway, already dressed in her own miniature, gowned for the family photo session that would precede the adult festivities. "Thank you, sweetheart." Elena knelt down to straighten Maya's ribbon. "Remember, after the pictures, Mrs. Chun will take you upstairs for pizza and movies while the grown-ups have their party." What Elena didn't know was that Mrs. Chun, their longtime housekeeper, had been replaced for the evening by Sophia Chun, Richard's new executive assistant, who had joined Sterling Technologies 6 months ago. The irony of the shared surname would later seem almost comedic if the situation weren't so devastating. The gala proceeded with clockwork precision. Elena moved through the crowd like a ghost, making polite conversation with tech industry leaders, venture capitalists, and politicians. She had perfected the art of being present but invisible, supportive but never overshadowing. When Richard gave his keynote speech about the lonely journey of entrepreneurship and sacrificing everything for a vision, she applauded with the rest of the audience, even as the words felt like tiny knives. Richard Sterling built this empire from nothing, he proclaimed to the crowd of 500. Through sheer determination and an unwavering commitment to innovation, Sterling Technologies has revolutionized how we interact with artificial intelligence. Elena's hands stilled in her lap. The eye-eye interface he was describing had been her design, created during those long nights when Maya was a toddler and Richard was consumed with investor meetings. She had solved the user experience problem that had stumped his entire development team, but her contribution had been quietly absorbed into the company mythology as Richard's stroke of genius. After the speeches, Elena excused herself to check on Maya. As she climbed the marble staircase, she heard laughter from the steady Richard's laugh, and a woman's voice she didn't recognize. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, she saw her husband pressed against the desk with a petite Asian woman in a red dress, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. "When are you going to tell her?" the woman whispered against Richard's neck. "Soon, Sophia. After the Morrison deal closes. Elena won't fight it. She's too dependent on this lifestyle to risk losing everything." Elena's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a gasp. She backed away from the door, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain they would hear it. 20 minutes later, when she returned to the party with Maya in tow for the final photos, Richard's arm around her waist felt like a trap. The confrontation came 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning that started like any other. Richard waited until Maya left for school before sitting Elena down in his home office, the same office where she had witnessed his betrayal. "I want a divorce," he said without preamble, his tone as businesslike as if he were firing an employee. "And I'm seeking full custody of Maya." Elena stared at him, though part of her had been preparing for this moment since the night of the gala. "Richard, let me finish." He leaned back in his leather chair, projecting the same confidence he used in boardroom presentations. "I've consulted with Marcus Webb. He's the best family attorney in the state. We both know you have no independent income, no recent work experience, and no real claim to my company. This doesn't have to be complicated if you're reasonable." The word reasonable hung in the air like poison. Elena had been reasonable for 8 years. Reasonable when she gave up her own career in software development. Reasonable when she moved across the country away from her family. Reasonable when she faded into the background of his success story. "What about Maya?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "She needs stability. Private school, college funds, opportunities, things I can provide." Richard's eyes were cold, calculating. "You can have visitation rights, of course." "I'm not heartless." That afternoon, while Richard was at the office announcing his engagement to Sophia Chun to his senior staff, Elena drove to downtown Los Angeles and walked into the law offices of Rodriguez and Associates. Lisa Rodriguez was a recommendation from Dr. Kim, a family attorney known for representing women in high-asset divorces. "He thinks I have nothing," Elena told Lisa, placing a small key on the polished conference table. "But he's wrong." Lisa picked up the key, raising an eyebrow. "Safety deposit box? 8 years of documentation. Every email where he asked for my technical input. Every business decision I influenced. Every late night I spent debugging code while he slept." Elena's voice grew stronger with each word. "And something else he doesn't know about." As Elena began to explain, Lisa's expression shifted from professional sympathy to sharp interest. By the time Elena finished speaking, the attorney was leaning forward, her pen moving rapidly across her legal pad. "Mrs. Sterling," Lisa said carefully, "are you absolutely certain about what you're telling me?" Elena nodded. "I kept copies of everything. I learned early in our marriage that Richard had a selective memory about contributions that weren't his own." Outside the law office windows, the Los Angeles skyline stretched toward the ocean, full of possibility and promise. For the first time in years, Elena felt like she was moving toward something instead of being dragged along in someone else's wake. The war was about to begin, but Elena had spent 8 years learning her opponent's weaknesses. And unlike Richard, she understood the difference between confidence and preparation. The courtroom theater, the Los Angeles Superior Court, felt like a cathedral of judgment, its high ceilings and mahogany panels designed to intimidate. Elena sat at the defendant's table beside Lisa Rodriguez, her hands folded calmly in her lap, wearing a simple charcoal gray suit that conveyed dignity without ostentation. Across the aisle, Richard had assembled his legal army Marcus Webb and 2 associates, their expensive suits and leather briefcases arranged like weapons of war. Judge Patricia Henley, a silver-haired woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, surveyed the courtroom with the authority of someone who had seen every variation of human drama play out in her domain. She had been on the bench for 23 years and had developed an instinct for distinguishing between performance and truth. "This is a dissolution of marriage with contested custody," Judge Henley announced. "Mr. Webb, you may present your opening statement." Marcus Webb rose with theatrical precision, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his voice carrying the resonance of expensive private education. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Richard Sterling built a technology empire through his vision, innovation, and relentless dedication. He is a devoted father who can provide the stability and resources his daughter Maya needs for her future." Webb gestured toward Elena with practiced dismissiveness. "The respondent, while a loving mother, has been unemployed for 8 years. She has no independent income, no current professional skills, and has shown signs of emotional instability as my client's success has grown. Mr. Sterling seeks primary custody not out of malice, but out of genuine concern for his daughter's welfare. Elena watched Richard nod solemnly at appropriate moments, playing the role of the reluctant but responsible father. Beside him sat Sophia Chun, her presence a calculated statement about Richard's new stability. Elena noticed how Sophia's hand rested possessively on Richard's arm, how she whispered supportive words during pauses, how her diamond engagement ring caught the courtroom lights like a tiny spotlight. When Webb finished his opening, Lisa Rodriguez stood with quiet confidence. She was smaller in stature than Webb, her voice softer, but there was steel beneath her professional courtesy. Your Honor, this case is indeed about providing stability for Maya Sterling. But true stability comes from honesty, integrity, and recognizing the full truth of the family's history. Lisa's eyes found Elena's for a moment, drawing strength from her client's calm composure. The evidence will show that Mrs. Sterling has been far more than a supportive spouse. She has been an active, essential partner in building the Sterling Technologies empire, a contribution that has been systematically erased from the record. Richard's confident smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the narrative he had expected. Elena to present. The first phase of testimony proceeded as a carefully choreographed dance. Richard took the stand with the ease of someone accustomed to commanding attention, detailing his rise from college dropout to tech mogul. He spoke eloquently about late nights at the office, difficult decisions, the loneliness of leadership. Building Sterling Technologies required total dedication, he testified, his voice carrying just the right note of weary nobility. I missed family dinners, vacations, bedtime stories with Maya. I sacrificed everything for this vision, and while I regret the personal cost, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. Marcus Webb guided him through a litany of professional achievements, each one presented as a solo performance. When Webb asked about Elena's role in the company, Richard's answer was masterfully dismissive. Elena was wonderfully supportive, of course. She hosted dinner parties, managed our social calendar, created a beautiful home environment. But the technical and strategic work, that was my domain. Elena doesn't have a background in software development or business strategy. Elena felt the familiar sting of erasure, but this time it was accompanied by something else: anticipation. She caught Lisa's subtle nod and reached into her briefcase for a manila envelope marked confidential for court eyes only. When it was Elena's turn to testify, she spoke quietly but clearly, her voice carrying none of Richard's theatrical flourishes. She described their early years together, her own computer science degree from Stanford, the nights they spent coding side by side in their first apartment. I wasn't just a supportive wife, she said, looking directly at Judge Henley. I was Richard's technical partner, his sounding board, and often his ghostwriter. But over the years, my contributions were gradually written out of the story. Richard's attorney objected repeatedly, dismissing Elena's claims as revisionist history and desperate attempts to claim unearned credit. But Elena remained unshaken, her testimony methodical and precise. As the morning session concluded, Judge Henley called for a lunch recess. In the hallway, Richard approached Elena with Sophia at his side, his confidence restored by his morning performance. This is embarrassing, Elena, he said loud enough for the gathering reporters to hear. These fantasy stories about being a tech expert, it's beneath you. Just accept the settlement offer and maintain some dignity. Sophia squeezed his arm sympathetically. She's clearly struggling with the transition, she murmured, her voice carrying false compassion. It must be hard to accept that life is moving forward. Elena met Richard's gaze steadily. You're right about one thing, she said. Life is definitely moving forward. When court reconvened, Lisa Rodriguez stood and addressed Judge Henley with formal precision. Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that fundamentally changes the nature of this case. She handed the manila envelope to the bailiff, who delivered it to Judge Henley. This evidence was obtained through proper legal channels and demonstrates that the financial and custody arguments presented by the petitioner are based on false premises. Judge Henley opened the envelope, her expression neutral as she began to read, but as she turned each page, her eyebrows rose incrementally. After several minutes of silence, she looked up at both legal teams. Counselors, I need to review this evidence thoroughly. We'll recess until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Her gaze lingered on Richard, who had gone pale. I suggest both parties use this time to consider whether their current positions accurately reflect all relevant facts. As the courtroom emptied, Elena felt a strange calm settle over her. The performance was ending, and the truth was about to take center stage. Outside, Richard cornered Marcus Webb in heated whispered conversation, while Sophia clutched his arm with growing anxiety. Elena walked past them toward the elevator, and for the first time in 8 years, she didn't try to make herself smaller or quieter. The storm was coming, and Elena had learned to dance in the rain. The truth unveiled. Judge Patricia Henley arrived at the courthouse at 7:30 the next morning, an hour before the scheduled session. She had spent the previous evening reviewing Elena's evidence package 3 times, each reading revealing new layers of deception that made her stomach turn. In her 23 years on the bench, she had seen countless cases of financial manipulation and parental alienation, but the systematic erasure documented in Elena's files was particularly egregious. The courtroom filled with unusual tension as both parties took their seats. Richard's confident demeanor from the previous day had been replaced by nervous energy. He kept adjusting his tie and whispering urgently with Marcus Webb. Sophia sat behind him, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. On the other side, Elena appeared serene, almost luminous in her composure. Detective Sarah Walsh, a cybercrime specialist who had helped authenticate Elena's digital evidence, sat in the gallery. Her investigation had uncovered additional documentation that even Elena hadn't known existed: backup servers, deleted emails recovered from Sterling Technologies systems, and financial records that painted a devastating picture of Richard's deliberate deception. "This court will come to order," Judge Henley announced, her voice carrying unusual gravity. "Before we proceed with testimony, I need to address the evidence presented yesterday by Mrs. Sterling's counsel." She lifted the manila envelope, its contents now spread across her desk in neat piles. "Mr. Sterling, in your testimony yesterday, you stated that your wife had no technical background and made no substantial contributions to Sterling Technologies. Is that your sworn testimony?" Richard stood slowly, his face pale but defiant. "Yes, Your Honor. Elena was supportive, but the technical work was entirely my responsibility." Judge Henley nodded grimly. "Mrs. Rodriguez, please present your evidence to the court." Lisa Rodriguez activated the courtroom's digital display system, and the first document appeared on the large screen, an email dated 6 years earlier, from Richard to Elena at 2:17 a.m. I'm completely stuck on the user interface problem. The beta testers say it's too complicated, but I can't figure out how to simplify it without losing functionality. Can you take a look? You always see solutions I miss. Elena's response, time-stamped 30 minutes later, included detailed wireframe sketches and code modifications. At the bottom, Richard had replied, "Brilliant. This is exactly what we needed. You just saved the product launch." The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Richard's face had gone from pale to ashen. "This is just one of 437 similar exchanges," Lisa continued, clicking to the next slide. "All documented communications, where Mr. Sterling specifically requested technical assistance from his wife, then praised her contributions." The next document was a financial record showing Elena's $200,000 inheritance from her grandmother, deposited directly into Sterling Technologies' operating account during the company's early cash flow crisis. Mrs. Sterling mortgaged her family property and invested her inheritance to keep Sterling Technologies afloat in 2019, Lisa explained. She is listed as a founding investor in the original corporate documents, entitled to 49% ownership. Marcus Webb shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. These documents were obtained without proper. Overruled. Judge Henley cut him off sharply. These documents were obtained through legitimate discovery processes. Detective Walsh's cybercrime unit verified their authenticity at Mrs. Sterling's request. Detective Walsh stood briefly to address the court. Your Honor, our forensic analysis confirmed that Mr. Sterling's legal team had access to all of these documents during discovery, but failed to disclose them. We also found evidence of systematic deletion attempts from company servers, which constitutes potential evidence tampering. The most damaging revelation came next to audio recordings Elena had made on her phone during late-night work sessions. In one clip, Richard's voice was clearly audible. Elena, you're the real genius here. I'm just the face of the operation. Promise me that if this company ever makes it big, you won't let me forget who really made it possible. The recording played in the silent courtroom like a ghost of better times. Richard's current version of himself was confronted by his younger, more honest incarnation. But the final piece of evidence was what broke the case open completely. Lisa displayed a handwritten letter on child stationery, decorated with crayon, drawings of hearts and flowers. This is a letter from Maya Sterling to her mother, written 3 weeks ago, Lisa announced. Maya asked her school counselor to help her write it because she was worried about the divorce proceedings. Judge Henley read the letter aloud, her voice softening. Dear Mommy, I know Daddy says I should live with him because he has more money. But money doesn't tuck me in at night or help me with bad dreams. You're the one who reads to me and makes me feel safe. I want to live with you because you love me for me, not because I make you look good. Love, Maya. P.S. I remember when you helped Daddy fix his computer problems. You're smart too. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard had buried his face in his hands, while Sophia stared at him with dawning horror, realizing she had aligned herself with a systematic liar. Judge Henley's voice, when she finally spoke, carried the weight of absolute authority. Mr. Sterling, your testimony yesterday was not merely misleading, it was perjurious. You have deliberately concealed your wife's financial contributions, technical expertise, and foundational role in building your company. She turned to address the full courtroom. This court finds that Mrs. Elena Sterling is entitled to her documented 49% ownership stake in Sterling Technologies, retroactive to the company's founding. Furthermore, given Mr. Sterling's demonstrated willingness to manipulate facts and attempt to erase his wife's contributions, this court questions his fitness as a primary custodial parent. Richard's carefully constructed empire began crumbling. In real time, Marcus Webb frantically shuffled papers, whispering damage control strategies, but the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. As for custody, Judge Henley continued, Maya Sterling has clearly expressed her preference through both her letter and her actions. The court awards primary physical custody to Mrs. Elena Sterling, with supervised visitation rights for Mr. Sterling pending completion of a court-ordered psychological evaluation. Elena felt the tears she had held back for months finally fall, but they were tears of relief, vindication, and hope. As the judge's gavel fell, she looked across the courtroom. To see Richard slumped in his chair, the weight of his deceptions finally crushing his carefully maintained facade. Outside the courthouse, Detective Walsh approached Elena with a grim smile. Mrs. Sterling, you should know this case has opened up a broader investigation into Sterling Technologies' business practices. Your documentation may help other people who've been systematically written out of their own stories. For the first time in 8 years, Elena Sterling walked into the afternoon sunlight as herself, not as someone's shadow, but as the architect of her own destiny. Mathing? Maya said, looking up from her math homework. Always. Are you going to get married again? A question caught Elena off guard. She had been so focused on rebuilding her professional identity that romance seemed like a distant consideration. I don't know, baby. Maybe someday, if I meet someone who sees me for who I really am. Maya nodded solemnly. Someone who doesn't try to make you smaller. The wisdom in her 8-year-old daughter's words took Elena's breath away. Exactly. That evening, as they drove home to their modest but comfortable apartment in Santa Monica, Maya chattered about her day, the coding project she was working on, the story she was writing for English class, the new friend she had made who also loved robotics. Elena listened, marveling at how much more animated and confident Maya had become since the custody change. Their apartment was nothing like the Malibu mansion, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, no ocean view, but it was filled with laughter, creativity, and authentic connection. Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator. Elena's coding notebooks sat openly on the coffee table, and neither of them had to perform for anyone's approval at bedtime. As Elena tucked Maya in, her daughter grabbed her hand. Mom, I'm proud of you. For what, sweetheart? For being brave. For showing me that women can build things and own their own stories. After Maya fell asleep, Helena sat on her small balcony with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Kim. Saw the Forbes article about Nexus Solutions. You're changing the world. The Forbes piece had featured Elena as one of 40 women reshaping tech, highlighting how her story had inspired other women to document their contributions, demand recognition, and start their own companies. But the real victory wasn't the recognition. It was the quiet satisfaction of building something authentic, something that reflected her values and vision. Elena opened her laptop and began writing in her journal, a practice Dr. Kim had encouraged. Tonight's entry began. I used to think strength meant making yourself smaller so others could shine brighter. Now I know that real strength means taking up the space you deserve and helping others do the same. In the distance, she could see the lights of downtown Los Angeles, where tomorrow she would mentor another brilliant woman, fund another innovative idea, and continue building a world where contributions were recognized, stories were preserved, and no one had to choose between love and visibility. Elena Sterling had learned to stop calculating her silence and started calculating her worth. And the numbers, finally, added up to something beautiful.